welcome to Seen Through Glass, and welcome back to the UK. Obviously I was here in July for the UK leg of Drive the World, but this now feels like a proper homecoming. Forgive the kind of granddad slight outfit, but it's really cold here in Britain, and this was the only jumper I could find because all of my stuff is still packed up in boxes at my parents' place. But anyway, the 911 Carrera T is still on its way back from America on a ship floating somewhere in the Atlantic Ocean, but who cares about that? Because the first thing I was only ever going to do as soon as I got back here as soon as we got back to the UK, was come and find my 360, but it's in bits, so that's a bit tough to see. But yeah, that is because I'm down here at AV Engineering, the absolute legends who sold me the car a couple of years ago and have looked after it, maintained it ever since then. And right now, it's in here having its second, it's having its annual service, the second annual service I've done with the car since I bought it. And you might be all going, Sam, what are you talking about? You haven't driven the car this year, it's literally been tucked away at Windrush storage, and that is true, but it doesn't matter, because it's always important to service your Ferrari. Anyway, as always, we're going to bring in Aldous, the sort of head mechanic, head engineer. I'm looking at him for approval, but I'm going to call him the head guy. But anyway, one of the guys down here at AV who takes care of my car so beautifully to explain what we're going to be doing at this year's service and any other things that he's spotted with my 360. Talk to me. Do I need to buy a new car? Has it fallen apart? What's going on?
Not this year.
Okay. Woohoo!
But most of that is down to the fact that you haven't really driven the car.
Yeah, which is a shame.
It is a shame, but you couldn't have taken it around the world.
No.
Otherwise, we would have been here doing a lot more than we are
We'd still be in Australia somewhere.
Quite possibly. So this year, it's an annual service. We're doing cam belts as well, which we'll talk about in a second. But Ferrari mandates annual servicing regardless of mileage. So we had to do that. Annual service consists of oil and filter change, brake fluid change, which is really important because it absorbs water even if you're not using the car, and a pollen filter change. So very, very straightforward. We allow time to inspect the car and go through it thoroughly. Now, because you haven't used the car, hasn't actually not much is worn out, or hardly anything is worn out at all. We've replaced one ball joint, which is pretty much par for the course for owning a 360. And we've had a couple of items that have gone wrong because you haven't used the car.
Ah, okay. So more proof to my thing that these cars will work better the more you use them.
Absolutely, absolutely. So the first thing was the door cable, the outer door cable for the handle, the driver's door handle. It is seized. It's like a bicycle brake cable.
Okay, so
and it's
the car wouldn't let. Basically, like the car's like, you didn't drive me, so
no, I'm not going to let you in. Basically, yes.
I love it.
And one of the radiator fans just malfunctioned and has gone wrong. Probably seized up inside.
Expensive stuff to fix?
Door cable, not about an hour's worth of work. Door cable is about 20 quid. So in Ferrari parts pricing, it's not expensive. For what is effectively a bicycle cable, it's very expensive. But that's just the way Ferrari parts prices go. The fan is quite expensive, end to end, including the VAT. It's about a £500 job. However, your warranty paid for that.
Woo!
So,
that's always good news.
Another good shout for the warranty company there.
Perfect.
Coming in and saved your bacon 2 years in a row.
Yeah, I was going to say, people may not remember, but last year we did there was a lot of work that needed to be done, and the warranty company really saved me out. So good for them once again. So those are the two things that kind of, you say, like seized up almost.
Yes, that's right.
Ball joint. Apart from that, there was nothing else that you...
Absolutely nothing else that needs to be done.
Okay, amazing.
So that's it on the kind of servicing side. Every 3 years, Ferrari mandate that we change the timing belts, or the cam belts. Okay. So it's your 3rd year anniversary. I can actually remember doing this particular car 3 years ago.
Well, that's the thing, because you'd literally just done it before I bought the car from you guys, and so that was kind of one of the decisions that helped me into purchasing it. I can't speak today. So anyway, as you say, it's now the anniversary. It's time to do them again.
Time to do the belts, yes. It's quite an involved job. Anyway, we've made it more involved because we're going to do something extra for you, which we don't normally do as part of a regular timing belt service. It's also a bigger job on your car because of the options that you have, because you've got the carbon seats, the roll cage, the harnesses. To actually get to the timing belts, we have to remove quite a lot of the interior. Which
I kind of noticed as I walked in today.
Yes. And you'll see inside here, that it's looking pretty Spartan in there.
Yeah, I mean, it's quite upsetting to see my engine like this, but then also to see the interior. Not exactly the way I wanted to return to my 360, but I appreciate
but we'll get it back together again. The engine being a part like this is not part of a regular timing belt service. This is something extra that we're doing. The timing belt service is just done in through the hatch behind the seats.
Well, I'm going to swing around. If you just stay there, I'll come around this side, and then.
Yeah, let me get a torch and.
Here we go. So this is the big thing, 355 versus 360. 355 is famous for having to actually take the engine out to do this job, but when the 360 came along, Ferrari very helpfully put this kind of hatch back here behind the seats, so Aldous can get in there and do some work. So yeah, talk me through, what are we looking at, and what have you got to do?
Obviously we remove the hatch to gain access to the front of the engine. We've got 2 timing belts, one for each bank, driven off the drive pulleys down here. Obviously these are your 2 camshafts, exhaust and intake. It's all held in place with these tensioners, or this is the tensioner bearing. I replaced these 3 years ago with Hill Engineering tensioner bearings, so these are good for at least another 3 years. We check the operation of the tensioners, because these can sometimes fail to extend, and as the belt stretches it becomes very loose. And in fact quite often we'll come to take a belt off and you could literally just peel it off with your hands. Okay. That's quite a common thing for us, and what happens there is that if people don't set the tension right correctly here, it locks this hydraulic tensioner down here and it just basically keeps it in place, and as the belt gets a little bit longer it just gets looser. Got the same on the other side. One of the things that we're doing with your car is that we're going to adjust the timing, and as part of that procedure is to remove all the covers from the top of the engine so that we can see the camshafts. Part of it was also to install this gauge here on the crank. This tells us the crank angle, so as we're turning the engine over, we can see where the position of the crankshaft is. And then what we're going to do is change the position of the cams in relation to the crank by loosening these bolts here, so that the pulley is always fixed in relation to the crankshaft. We loosen these bolts here, move the camshaft around, and then retighten them up, and it changes the position of the cam in relation to the crankshaft. And what we're trying to do is get the action of the valves timed in exactly the right time. So we want them to be opening and closing at exactly the right time. Ferrari give us a spec sheet, and we measure the position of the valves as the crankshaft is moving, and we adjust the position of the camshaft to get the valves opening and closing at exactly the right time.
Wow. Okay. And is this something that you're sort of fixing what maybe the factory got wrong, or is this something that over time has kind of gone out of time?
What we're doing is putting the engine to the specifications laid down by the factory.
Okay. So, but why is it out? Is my sort of,
because over time, as people work on the engines as the bits and pieces are moved around, the camshafts can move in relation to the crankshaft. You know, the pulleys have to come off to have the cam seals done. People generally will just take them off and put them back on where they think is in the right place. But we're talking about changing or measuring the position of the valves to a tolerance of about 80 microns, which so 0.08 of a mil,
sure,
which is about the width of a human hair.
Okay.
So even in your best possible efforts, when you're taking the pulley off and you try and put it back on again, you're never going to get it exactly right. Okay. And what we're doing is we're using dial gauges to measure very, very accurately the position of the valves.
And this is going to help with longevity of the engine, performance of the engine. What are we looking to sort of? So
longevity to a certain extent. If the valves aren't opening and closing properly, especially the exhaust valves, they can burn out. They have to be off a lot to burn out. But generally, it's going to be performance, and you should feel a big improvement in the performance of this engine.
Amazing. Well, I mean, the car's always been incredible to drive, but every time you guys get your hands on it, it seems to be better. And you were quoting some figures earlier. I'm not going to say them in case you don't want me to quote them just yet, maybe until you've done your job. But it is suggesting that this car, yes, is going to be kind of transformed. I say it's still upsetting to see it in this shape, but I trust you guys implicitly. And it's just that thing where, of course, we're getting the service done, but this, as you say, is an extra job. And something which just is going to tighten everything up and give me a healthier, better car, in theory.
Absolutely, and it'll be sweeter running, be smoother, it'll be much more responsive. It'll just be as it should be, which unfortunately not many cars are like this. But it's a lot of work. You know, we're dealing with very, very fine tolerances, and you've got a lot of kind of measurement error in there as well. So we have to measure, adjust, measure, adjust, because if you get the measurement wrong, you're nowhere, basically. So it's a very time-consuming
Sure, I can imagine.
But it's a very, very rewarding task for us. So we don't make any money when we do these type of things, because if we charge the hours that we actually spent on it, people would never pay for it. So we do it as a kind of as something that we like to do, and it's when you drive the car before and afterwards, the difference is incredible.
Night and day.
Absolutely.
I can't wait. Amazing. Well, look, thank you so much. Thank you again, of course, for talking us all through this, and I can't wait for it all to be back together and for me to have a go. Now, as I'm sure you've realised, considering my car is in bits, that Aldous still has quite a lot of work to do. So I'm not going to be driving it today. That will be coming in another video. But whilst he is getting on with the work, I wanted to show you this. You've probably noticed it in the background of the video going, what the hell is that? Well, it's kind of this sort of ultimate 360, basically. It's a project that Ed from AV Engineering has been working on for like 10 years with the owner. And the car is quite famous online. Some of you who are 360 fans may know all about this. And yes, when you hear more about it right now, I think you're all going to be pretty blown away. So yeah, let's have a tour around this quite insane car, and then unbelievably, we're going to try and take it out onto the roads, even though it's 5 degrees and a little bit wet. I don't know where to start, so I guess you need to. Okay. Trevor, yeah, look, just talk me through, I guess, from the beginning, what is this creation?
Okay, so this is over 10-year build. I started out with my idea. I wanted, before Ferrari did, a challenge race car for the road.
You were the originator of the Stradale.
Well, I've certainly used a lot of original challenge Stradale parts on this car, but also a lot of race car parts have ended up on the vehicle as well over time. So originally it looked like exactly what you would expect the Challenge Stradale to look like in this factory condition, but then later I started to upgrade and I got a bit carried away.
Yeah.
So we then
most people might have noticed that, but
yes,
sure, go on.
So you ended up with things like this unobtainium item here, which is a carbon Michelotto hood, completely unavailable, functional NACA duct in there, saves a reasonable amount of weight, but also looks amazing. Race car brakes, which are from a 430 Challenge race car. Also centre lock race wheels. The very first car that ever had them out of a factory race car. Yeah. And then if we move further back through the car, you've got all the usual things like the Lexan rear window. But of course, this is not normally on there, but this is a high downforce rear carbon wing. The car itself, one of its most famous things is it's actually had 250 kilos of weight stripped out of it. And just to give you some perspective on this, a typical Stradale is about 70 kilos of weight removed. So you will notice this when we go for a test drive.
That is a huge weight saving, and even today when you go on these test drives or press drives of new lightweight versions of cars, 250 kilos, I mean that's a different car.
It is. Then as we moved further forward as well, we've done things like all the electronics, headlights and rear lights, they're all LED, so it's none of the original analog, halogen bulbs and things like this. It's all been upgraded. The engine itself, it revs to 9,250 rather
Can you
than
just remind people what it usually revs to?
8.6.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
it screams.
Oh my god.
It's got race car spec mapping on there as well, so you will notice it's quite a bit different than usual car. Interior wise, it's fully stripped out, and this is, by the way, a gated car. It is not an F1. So if we look inside, it's minimalist. You've got a Challenge Snap-Off Boss racing steering wheel, which is very handy if you want to get in and out on the fixed racing.
Sure.
F50 gear knob.
Oh my god, there you go. Well, as you say, and gated. I mean, that's the...
Yes, and of course usual Challenge Ferrari dashboard. I've even monogrammed the dash with my moniker 360 Trev. It's even got things like this. I don't know if you can see this here. This is manufactured in carbon, like the Enzo.
Unbelievable.
I mean, we've literally gone to town, customised fixed bucket race seats, because the original project manager of the Challenge Ferrari, who I've spoken to on numerous occasions, he originally wanted to put fixed race bucket seats in the Challenge Ferrari, but not many customers wanted to do it.
Okay. And who's the signature over there on the door?
That's this is Michael Schumacher. So on the original Japanese specification Challenge Ferrari,
The Schumacher edition.
yes,
Yeah.
they put this on all theirs. So I thought it would be a nice homage to that.
Anything
project.
Schumacher related, I'm a fan.
Yes.
Unbelievable. And so, most of the weight saving was from the interior?
Well, no, it's interior is one element, but just to give you an example on interior, so the carbon door panels, they look like the regular Challenge Ferrari ones,
Sure.
but these ones, just as an example, are 600 grams each. They're manufactured in a slightly different way than the usual road car spec stuff, which normally is done for stylistic reasons.
Okay.
But it's a different technology, whereas this is autoclaved, proper autoclaved stuff, because it was for the race cars. This is 2.5 kilos for a regular typical carbon door panel.
Sure.
And then the road car panel would be about 6 kilos. So if you give it's 10 times lighter.
Sure.
Just on the door panel.
Unreal.
And again, we had to do all kinds of engineering work to be able to get I still wanted to keep it roadable, so it's actually got glass electric windows still.
Okay.
It still has air conditioning. It's still a street road usable car,
But somehow
with super
250
lightweight,
kilos lighter.
super lightweight, and the car feels very fun on the road.
I can only imagine. Well, luckily, I don't have to imagine much longer because, yes, we're now going to take this behemoth creation out onto the streets. You're mad. I just wanted to tease myself. Before anything, I just wanted to tease myself. That sound.
Wait until you feel out when it starts to plane, when it goes on cam, because it's almost like a two-stage turbo.
No, but it's the two-stage turbo, but also the two-stage soundtrack,
Yes.
which I think is like a real challenge to the other thing. Is that first valve you think, oh, here we go, and then it just has that extra final bit, which is. Oh my god! Oh my god!
Totally different, huh?
Oh, I mean, I'm speechless. And you're right about these brakes, because like I'm not really hunkering on yet, but they're so reassuring.
Yes, they are.
It's the one thing about my cars, the brakes are quite squidgy.
Yes.
And every now and again, when I'm going quick, I'm like, oh, can I really trust this? Where there's a really nice feel to that pedal. But as always, it's the sound, it's the initial thing. I haven't even got into power yet. Like,
No.
Oh, wow. Is that me or is that you?
That's you.
Someone's
That's
popular. Okay, I'll go back to them. I'm driving an insane 360. I can't speak right now. And it feels, I think the seats, the steering wheel, and then the responsiveness.
Yes.
You definitely feel like you're in something kind of berserk and super, super special. I love it.
It's a proper car.
Oh, it's dialed in.
Yeah, it's a
It's a
proper
proper
thing.
car. It's just really freaking dialed in. And Okay, take that manual Challenge to Dali I drove in America, right?
different.
This is completely different.
Different gravy.
What this has, there was something with that car that I walked away from it going, amazing creation, but it didn't feel as special and mad as a Challenge to Dali. This is a Challenge to Dali, even crazier, with a gated box. I mean, like, just... Oh, yeah, that's how unused to driving I am. I missed third gear. Dude. And I can only imagine when you start throwing it into corners.
Oh yeah, it really.
It must just hook. Did you notice the difference when you put that wing on? Did it feel?
Yeah, you got much more secure.
Okay, interesting.
Yes. Well, I drive it on the Isle of Man, and there's no speed limits there.
Yeah, that's a good place to drive it.
So
Wow.
you need the wing. It's not just for show.
I mean, this, when you're pushing on, I think I'm driving at like 4/10 right now. When you start, this must be so
It's a
exhilarating.
very fast car. There's
You
not
have
a
to
lot.
really pay attention though, right?
Exactly. Well, that's why I enjoy it.
Yeah, of
There's
course.
not a lot that can keep up.
Yeah, and that control that the manual box
Yes.
gives you. Wow, my heart's starting to really race. I think today's become very expensive for me. Wow, 10 years though this has taken.
Yes.
And how many things did you do before you got here? Like, did you take a few steps in the wrong direction?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, I can imagine.
Well, over the years, I've tried probably every single sports exhaust on the market.
Okay.
Every single one. Titanium exhaust, Shuby exhaust, Capristo exhausts, Challenge factory exhaust. Nothing sounds better than the Challenge exhaust.
I will agree with you there. You just can't beat that. I don't think there's a better sounding car from factory in the world. People will say, oh, Lexus LFA, Pagani Zonda, but no, that it's,
And when you've got the race headers with a major collector from F1 on there, along with race cats, it just comes alive with the proper timing mapped in and everything else.
oh, I love it. It feels inherently special, as all Ferraris should and often do, but there's just something about it that feels edgy, and it feels like it could kill you.
Yes.
Which is like, that's what I look for in a car. So like, every now and again you're like, ooh, am I gonna die this time I accelerate? Not sure. But, oh, mate. I just want to find tunnels, like that's what I want to do. And because we've got the factory speedo in front of us, which the red line is at 8,500. You say that actually this goes up to what,
9,250.
So you just feel it, like
Yes.
you just know, okay? Because oh my god. Well, as special as this is and has been, and I will thank you for it. I kind of want to let you drive because I feel like this car's probably way more capable than I'm allowing it to be.
You know what, right? Just go back around again first, because you know it's only starting to get a bit of temperature in now.
I'm
Go back
only
the other way
starting.
now.
Okay, fine. Here he is. It's his car, and I'm like, mate, you drive now. Thank you so much. And he's like, no, keep going. I love it. I love it. Those brakes again. Oh, and the timing. I just got an echo off the trees. I think all of my hair is standing up. And I'm not just saying this because you're sitting next to me, but the only thing I can think of recently that I've driven that's had that turn in is a 600 LT McLaren.
Well, I love properly set up handling.
Okay.
And I've done all the geometry calculations. I took it to tracks. I tested it. I've got zero toe at the front, so it's very dialed in. It's very accurate.
Super accurate, like,
Yes.
and it's just one of those
Yes.
where it just goes and okay, fine, that was a 50 mile an hour left,
Yes.
like long left-hander, but I looked at the corner and it was there, like,
Yes.
like there was no messing around.
And wait.
Mate. wow. Oh God. I was a little apprehensive about jumping into this car because, okay, so I'm a Ferrari purist in the sense of that I like history, I like originality, I like my car kind of relatively stock because I just feel like that's how Ferrari made it and I've never really thought about modifying it. But this is so insanely impressive because it feels like Ferrari modified the Challenge Stradale themselves. It doesn't feel like some crazy creation that people have slapped twin turbochargers on and a supercharger and it's 1,500 horsepower. It just feels like a better Challenge Stradale, if that makes any more sense, or a crazier Challenge Stradale. It is a truly one-of-one, unique project that could never really be replicated, and I don't think it ever should. This is Trevor's car, and he's just made the most unbelievable thing. So huge congrats to him, but also huge thanks to him for letting me have a go in it. It's sort of given me a few ideas of what I might want to do on my car in the future, but more of that later, because yes, my car unfortunately still has some work to be done with it before it's sort of tickety-boo and up and running so that I can drive it now. I am back with it. I hope you've enjoyed today's video. I hope you found it insightful. Give it a thumbs up if you have. Make sure to follow AV Engineering on Instagram. I'll put their information below. And then make sure to subscribe to Seen Through Glass for plenty more videos to come.